Hello everybody, it's Sarah, and today we are going to talk about what I tentatively plan on reading in May. And remember last month when I was so proud and saying like, yeah, this month I managed to keep my TBR under 15 books because, you know, reading 20 books a month is fun, but it stresses me out, which still is true, but this month, regardless, on my TBR for May, I have over 20 books, like including all my TBR chart polls. So yeah, that's gonna be fun to get through. Although I do have a reason why there's so many books on my May TBR, and that is mostly because I do not intend on reading all these books in May. First of all, there's a lot of exciting new releases that are coming out that I just put all of them on my TBR, and we'll see which books I'll get to, we'll see which books I'll actually end up buying, and so on. I kind of have a not so secret, because I talked about it on Twitter already, secret TBR, that I just put all the books on this TBR already, but I don't intend on reading all the books this month. And then there's a few things like that where I have more books that I put on my TBR than I intend on reading. Now that we have all of that out of the way, let's start with the new releases, because obviously I don't have most of these books, actually any of these books, since it's not May yet. I don't have any of these books with me yet, and if I don't talk about them now, I'll forget about them. The first new release that I am very excited for is The House of Always, which is the fourth book in the A Chorus of Dragons series by Jen Lyons. I have been reading this series, buddy reading this series with Cleo from Bemused Bookworm. We're both enjoying it so much. The third book so far was my favorite of the books, and I cannot wait for this fourth book. Now, the plot, for those of you who aren't familiar with, I'll just tell you the plot of the first book, or a summary of the plot of the first book, because otherwise it'll get too confusing and too spoilery. But in the first book we follow Kieran, who is a lost heir to this noble house. And there's also a prophecy about him. That's basically it. And every book has kind of a dual timeline. There's split personalities, not split personalities, split POVs and so on. It's a fun series. And once I have read The House of Always, I will review the series up to that point. The second sequel coming out in May that I plan on reading is The Dragon of Jin Sayeng, which is the third and final book in the Chronicles of the Witch Queen by K.S. Veloso. This is an Eastern Asian, mostly Eastern Asian inspired high fantasy series, and we follow a queen who has been left by her king 5 years ago. Now she got a letter from him and she goes in search for him. That's basically it. And yeah, I read the first two books, kind of enjoyed them. I don't like the main character that much, but I enjoyed both of the books enough that I want to see the trilogy through to the end, and so that's gonna happen in May, hopefully. I have two more new releases I'm excited for. The first of those is Son of the Storm by Sooooo Davis Okungbowa. I know absolutely nothing about this book, aside from the fact that it's African inspired and that the author grew up in Africa, I think in Nigeria, if I remember correctly. And yeah, that's all I need to know aside from the cover, because the cover is absolutely gorgeous. Like, even if I knew nothing else of this book, I think I would buy it just because of this cover. Also, something that makes me even more excited to read this book is the author recently tweeted on English as a colonial language and how the use of English is often influenced, you know, by the colonial history, not the colonial history, but the history of the colonial countries. And so a lot of times you will find English used, or English vocabulary used, in very different ways in African countries compared to America, UK, and so on, which you'd think it should be obvious, since like not even Americans and British people use the same English. There's not even the same English used everywhere on the British Islands. But yeah, still has to be said sometimes, apparently. And him just tweeting that out makes me really interested to get into this book, to kind of take apart the vocabulary he uses to build his world and so on. So yeah, really excited for that one. Hopefully I'll get to it. And then the last new release is kind of a spontaneous new release that I maybe want to pick up, and that is Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. As I have said multiple times already on my channel, I'm not really that interested anymore in reading a lot of adult high fantasy by male authors, especially new stuff. But it's Viking inspired and there's a massive dragon on the cover, and I'm sorry, dragons just, they get me. If I see a massive dragon on the cover, I'm gonna be interested. That's how it is. Also, for some reason, I really feel FOMO with this one. I don't know why exactly that is though. So yeah, this one as well. And then let's talk about two more books that I don't have here with me yet before we maybe get into my physical TBR chart and pull those before talking about some other books. But the first book that I don't have here with me yet is Joe Abercrombie's Before They Were Hanged, or Before They Are Hanged. One or the other, which is the second book in his first Law trilogy. I recently started buddy reading this trilogy recently in April, and so we're gonna continue on with this trilogy. Joe Abercrombie, going back to me not being interested in male fantasy authors, was one of the few authors that I'm still interested in reading, or is one of the few authors. So yeah, that's that. Excited to continue on. I enjoyed the first book, but we'll talk more about that in my April wrap-up. And then the last book that I don't have here with me yet is Fireheart Tiger, which was the book that was chosen for my book club of Queens, Witches and Valkyries. In that book club, it's all about focusing on reading books, reading adult high fantasy books that were written by women, genderqueer folks, as well as non-binary folks. And usually in the middle of the previous month, I'll upload a choice of 4 books for the next month. In April, for May, I was a little bit lazy. I only chose books that we had on previous polls already to give them a second and third chance. And Fireheart Tiger won, which I'm really excited for because it's a novella. I think it's like 100 pages, 150 pages max. So yeah, but this one is... I always forget to talk about what things are about. Like, Before They Were Hanged is grimdark fantasy. It's kind of hard to explain what the first Law series is about. And Fireheart Tiger, the only thing I know for sure about it is that it's inspired by a pre-colonial Vietnamese setting. So yeah, excited for that. And now maybe let's move on to my physical TBR chart, as I said. This is my physical TBR chart. As the name suggests, it holds all the books that I have not read and that I physically own already. I have the goal to get to a TBR 0 by the end of 2021. So what I always do this year is I pull 4 books from this TBR chart to then read 2 to 3 books in the coming month. So I don't have to read all of the books, but you know, sometimes it happens. So the first book is going to be Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. I unhauled this recently, so I'm gonna pull another first book again. So the right first book is now going to be, what is it going to be? Die Vermessung der Welt, which, oh my god, where is it? I don't know where it is. It's down there, I think. Die Vermessung der Welt by Daniel Kehlmann. This is, the English translation is Measuring the World, maybe, I don't know. And this is basically a historical fiction novel fictionalizing a meeting between Carl Friedrich Gauss and Alexander von Humboldt, who were both scientists. Like, one was like a natural scientist and the other one was a mathematician, and this is basically a fictional meeting between those two characters, or those two scientists, kind of. Scientist is the wrong word, but you know, those two historical people. Second one is The Book Thief. I don't think I have to tell anyone what this is about. This is basically a historical fiction novel set in Germany during the Second World War and narrated by death. So apparently I got all my few historical fiction novels in this month's TBR. So my third pull is Thief's Magic by Trudy Canavan. I do not know what this is about. It's the first book in the Millennium Rule series. I'm not even sure if this is adult or YA high fantasy, to be honest. But Trudy Canavan, of course, wrote one of my absolute favorite series of all time, which was why I bought this when it first came out in like, I think 2014 or something. And yeah, I still have not read it, but there's actually another Trudy Canavan book on my TBR already for this month, or like tentatively on my TBR for this month. So we'll see, maybe I'll make it another Trudy Canavan month or something like that. And then the last book from my TBR jar is, where do I have it? This book right here. Die Stimme der Wölfe by Henri Löwenbroek, which I have over here. It would be translated to The Voice of the Wolves, but I don't think this series has been translated into English. This is set in a, I don't know if it's set in medieval France or like maybe even pre-Roman France, or if this is just inspired by like, you know, Gallic culture. But this is either historical fantasy or fantasy, and we follow a boy who can talk to wolves, I think. That's basically it, but this actually is on one of my secret TBRs, which I'll talk about later. So maybe I should get to it anyway. So I ordered food and it came faster than expected, so I guess we gotta hurry this up a little bit. But next, let's talk about my rereads, or the one reread that I plan to do in May, and that is The Trials of Apollo, The Hidden Oracle by Rick Riordan. This is the last book that I gotta reread that I have already read from the Rick Riordan Greek myth-inspired series, and then I can finally continue on with this series and hopefully finish it. I'm not interested in reading the Kane Chronicles or the, not Magnus Bane, Magnus Chase series, but I still wanna finish The Trials of Apollo. Next, let's talk about two other series I wanna continue on or finish, and then we'll do one of the other TBR jars, maybe. But I am so ready to finally finish The Wheel of Time. I only have A Memory of Light left, which is the 14th and last book in the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan, co-written, or this book co-written by Brandon Sanderson. And yeah, I'm excited to be done. So excited. Not gonna tell you what this is about because it's way too big. Just read this series if you're interested. There's no way I can explain what it's about. And then the second series I wanna finish in May is the Inheritance trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. The third book is Kingdom of Gods, and then I also have one short story left to read, which is called The Awakened Kingdom. And yeah, this series is probably, and I'm gonna say it even before finishing the last of the books, is probably my favorite series by N.K. Jemisin. It's this series set in a world where there's like gods living among mortals, and it's like the characters are great, the world building is great. I love it so much, and once I have finished this, I will have read all the books that I plan on reading by N.K. Jemisin, because I don't really plan on reading The City We Became or How Long Until Black Future Month? Was that the name of the short story collection? I don't remember, but her short story collection. Also not really that interested in that because I'm not that interested in short stories. But yeah, very, very excited because I love the first two books so much. Since we were just talking about series I intend on finishing, let's next do my series TBR jar. In here I have the names of all the series that are unfinished on my shelves that I still intend on finishing, and every month I just continue on with one of the series. Sometimes that means I finish the series, sometimes that just means that, you know, I continue on with one. So The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. I don't know why this one is still in there, because I finished The Lord of the Rings last year. So let's pull a second time. I mean, I guess I could just read the Silmarillion, but you know, I don't wanna. So let's pull a second one, or look at a second one. Apparently I have a ton of series in here that I don't intend on finishing anymore, because the next one is the Books of Babel, which I decided to DNF and also unhaul the first book. So yeah, let's pull a third one. So I pulled the Books of Pelennor series by Alison Croghan, which I have pulled a few times already, and it's time for me to finally finish the series. For that I gotta reread book 2 first, which is The Riddle. I can kind of remember book 1 because it's been like shorter. It's been like 3 years since I last reread book 1. I still gotta reread book 2 and then continue on with book 3. So that's 2 more books on my TBR for me. Isn't that great? Let me also try and see if I can summarize this. Basically, it's a pretty typical YA chosen one high fantasy. We follow, what's her name? Merad. We follow Merad, who grows up as a slave, and then one day the stranger shows up and takes her with him. And there might be some not nefarious stuff. There might be something going on with who she is. Let's move through the last few books I have on my TBR before we get into this TBR chart. But yeah, maybe I actually won't pull anything from this TBR chart this month because I have a lot of books on my TBR already. But yeah, the first of the books that I still have here, as I said, I have another Trudy Canavan book on my TBR. This is Ambassador's Mission, which is the first book in the Traitor's Spy trilogy, which is a sequel trilogy to the Black Magician's trilogy. I previously did read this, was very upset because some of my favorite characters weren't in it, and decided to DNF the series. However, recently Cleo read this series. I'm not sure if she already is done with the series, but I know she read the first 2 books. And she said that with the second book, the series gets a lot better and a lot more interesting. And so yeah, I decided to give it another chance. I bought this secondhand for like €3. And so yeah, that's what I'm gonna do, probably in May. Probably gonna start this in May. Then I still haven't read A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. Not gonna talk about this long. It's a polyamorous, bisexual Brides of Dracula retelling. Still gotta read it. However, I'm buddy reading this, or I decided to buddy read this, and you know, at first we had to wait for me to get the book, and then apparently they didn't have the book either, so now we're waiting for them to get the book. And yeah, excited to get through this nevertheless, hopefully in May. Then I have 2 more French books on my TBR because my dad decided he's now gonna start making me read French books. I'm not gonna read both of those in May. Maybe not even gonna finish one in May, but I'll start one of the 2. The first of those is a mystery, which when it comes to French mysteries, Georges Simenon is one of the, you know, most known ones, and I have Maigret et le Fantôme. So maybe gonna read this, or I'll finally read a Jules Verne book. This is not one of the famous Jules Verne books. This is called L'Archipel en Feu. And yeah, gonna read either of these 2. And so the last 2 books I have with me, I have on my TBR, are 2 of the books that are on the not so secret TBR that I already talked about. That TBR basically is reading high fantasy that is written by international authors. So authors not from the US, not from the UK, and not from Australia. And so, not from Canada as well, actually. Not from North America, not from the UK, and not from Australia. And so yeah, that's why the French author Henri Leeuwenbroek is also on that list. I intend to make a video once I'm through all the books that I intend to on reading for that. And yeah, I have 2 of the books already with me. They're actually quite hard to get a hold of for me, so yeah. But anyway, the first of the books is The 4 Profound Weaves by R.B. Lemberg, which is by a Ukrainian-Israeli author, I believe. And then the second book is Upon a Burning Throne by Ashok K. Banka, which is by an Indian author. So Ashok K. Banka is an Indian author. And both of these are fantasy. This is also very heavily LGBT themes and so on. This has very heavy LGBT themes. That is what I wanted to say. And this one is inspired by the... I forgot the exact name. Maha something. The Indian, basically the Indian big mythology epos. So yeah, I think that's what this one was inspired by, if I remember correctly. And yeah, now my battery is flashing, so that was it for my TBR for May. It's a lot of books. If you have any thoughts on any of the books, if you want to buddy read any of the books, or if you think I should prioritize any of the books, tell me those things down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. All the links to my social media are in the description box down below, so go and check those out. All the links to my book club that I already mentioned previously are also in the description box down below, so go and check those out as well. And yeah, with all of that said, I'm gonna go and eat my dinner now, and I hope I'll see you soon. Bye!